Recording in progress.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the late start here. We had a little technical difficulty, but welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for Canby, Oregon, Monday, November 25th, 2024. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We are going to go right to our first item, or second item, is the consent items. We've got the meeting minutes from October 14th, 2024. Any changes or modifications we need to make to those minutes?
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead, Judy.
I wasn't at that meeting, and so I can't vote, and I don't know, maybe you don't have a quorum to vote on that.
Very good. I did not realize that. So what we're going to do is there any reason to pass it on to the next meeting?
Please, let's go ahead and we'll do it December 9th, and hopefully we'll have a full body at that point, but that's totally fine. So we'll just push those forward to December 9th.
Very good. So the meetings minutes for October 14th, 2024, we're going to move forward to the December 9th meeting, and hopefully we'll have some more bodies here to take care of that for us. Moving right on to item number 3 is our citizen input on non-agenda items. Do we have any citizens on the Zoom? No. Anyone in the room? No? Okay, very good. Then we are going to move on to item number 4, which is old business, and I show we have none. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Item number 5 is new business. I show we have none. Is that correct?
Correct.
Very good. We are going to go right into our public hearing. To testify during a public hearing, please fill out the testimony card sheets at the back booth if you wish to testify, and hand it up here to the secretary so that she can notify us. I'm not sure that I don't think we have anybody that's going to be doing that tonight. We're going to go right into our public hearing, which is annexation 24-01/ZC2401. Tonight there is a matter before the hearing body that requires a public hearing. All questions must be directed through the chair, which is myself tonight. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by the staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria for review, and which is also contained in the staff report. A comprehensive plan or other land use regulations which the person believes to apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties the opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Right now, we're going to talk about conflict of interest. At this time, I would ask if any member of the hearing body who has had a conflict of interest, please indicate the nature and the extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate or abstain from the hearing, from hearing the matter. Mr. Llewellyn?
No conflict.
Mr. Mickelson?
No conflict.
Judy Joris?
No conflict.
Very good, and I also have no conflicts. Is there any questions by the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on to ex parte contact. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and the extent of such contact at this time.
None. I drive by the property at least twice a day, weekdays and weekends, but that's the extent of it.
Very good. Judy?
None.
Very good. I have visited the site, drew no conclusions. Any questions for the hearing body? Very good. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. We'll have the staff report. That will be approximately 5 minutes. Questions, if any, by the hearing body or staff. The chair will open the public hearing for testimony. The applicant will have 20 minutes, the proponents 3 minutes, the opponents 3 minutes, rebuttal 10 minutes. The chair will close the public hearing, and then we will go to any questions, if any, by the hearing body. Okay? I think that pretty much covers it. We will have discussion by the hearing body, and a decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This is the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure of the hearing? If not, we will ask staff to do their presentation.
Good evening, planning commissioners. Emma Porcola will be giving our presentation tonight.
Good evening, commissioners. So as Don mentioned, I will be walking you through the application for 1733 North Holly Street annexation and zone change. So a little familiarity with the site. The address is 1733 North Holly Street. The subject parcel is approximately 3.39 acres, and approximately 0.44 acres of right-of-way along North Holly is proposed to be annexed as well. That section is abutting the site and then continues down to the intersection of Holly and Territorial. The site abuts North Holly Street. North Holly Street is currently under Clackamas County management, and will remain so even with the right-of-way the right-of-way being annexed into the city. The rest of the site is surrounded by unincorporated area that is within Clackamas County and has Clackamas County zoning. The site currently has Clackamas County RRFF5 zoning, which is rural residential 5-acre zoning. This here shows you what the comprehensive plan land use designation is for the site. It is currently LDR, low density residential. Zoning, there's currently no city zoning on the site, and surrounding the site there is limited city zoning because the areas are outside the city limits, but there is a small section of the Dodds Farm subdivision that is adjacent to the site and is zoned R1. So tonight we are reviewing 2 applications for this proposal. One is to annex the property into the city. That is application ANN 2401. The second is with the annexation to apply city zoning, which is proposed zoning is R1, LDR, low density residential. City zoning is proposed. That proposed zoning is consistent with our comp plan, and the application number is ZC 2401. These are the list of the applicable standards for the application. We have general provisions, R1, the proposed zoning, criteria for a zoning map amendment to apply the city zoning, annexation criteria, and general standards and application criteria. This here are the approval criteria for the annexation. The first criterion is consistency with the development concept plan. Pursuant to our annexation chapter in the development code, certain areas as designated in that code chapter are required to complete a development concept plan or a development agreement. In this case, the area was required to complete a development concept plan. That development concept plan was completed and approved back in 2019 when the area of Dodds Farm subdivision, which is outlined here in red, was proposed for annexation into the city. And so at that time, pursuant to the code, the entire area you see outlined in blue had a DCP completed. The DCP evaluates pursuant to the code, utilities, streets, and services. So street layouts, sewer connections, water, pedestrian connectivity, parks are all assessed through the DCP, and those were all approved back in 2019. The site here is shown in this yellow highlight down in the southwest corner of the map. At the pre-application conference, while staff and the applicants were discussing the site, we noticed that there was one major concern that city staff had, and that was in regards to the street network proposed in the DCP, and specifically the stub that you see that connects to the south of the property off of the east-west road proposed. This was raised as a concern primarily because it indicates that there would be a southern connection all the way down to Territorial, where Hawthorne currently connects to Territorial at the south. However, that would not meet the city's access spacing standards for roads along Territorial Street. And so that was raised as a major concern. Because of that, we did look into what are the options if this area was to be a cul-de-sac rather than connect all the way through to Territorial. However, in doing that preliminary analysis, it showed that there was really not a great use of the space, and it created a pinch point in that area. And so after discussion with Public Works and planning staff, we decided to proceed with the recommendation to remove that stub from the property. So we are proposing that through this application, the stub be removed and instead it become a pedestrian walkway in order to meet street spacing standards. But this new configuration will allow some flexibility for future development of the area, particularly if the site, there is one tax lot that surrounds the entire site except for the North Holly adjacency. And if that tax lot was to ever be brought into the UGB, that allows more options for what the street spacing and the street layout could look like. And so this shows here, the applicant put together a plan to show what is now proposed and desired. The remaining criteria for annexation, the next one is land need for additional property in city limits. So the criteria say, there needs to be shown that there is a need for this land. As you all may remember, since you sat through so many discussions, we recently completed our H&A. The H&A actually looks at what is the capabilities within our current UGB, and this property is within the current UGB. It's not within current city limits. But the H&A did conclude that we need 22 acres, yes, 22.6 acres for additional single-family detached land outside our current UGB. And so that indicates that even though this is within city limits, or sorry, within the UGB, we still need that land because there is that much more needed outside the UGB itself. And just generally, there is fairly little land available to develop a brand new subdivision. The next is neighborhood compatibility. This is proposed to be R1. The applicant, there's no development approved via these applications. This is just to bring the land into the city and apply city zoning. However, the applicant has expressed that they have preliminary plans to create a single-family home subdivision in the area. And so with that in mind, and the R1 zoning, which is the lowest density residential, it feels like a good fit for the location, given that there is some unincorporated land adjacent and there's single-family homes in the Dodds Farm subdivision across Holly, and an unincorporated single-family home also across Holly. The last is capacity of facility and services. This has been evaluated through several avenues, one being the DCP, considered all these facilities and services applicable to the area. Those were approved through the DCP, through the pre-application, and through requesting service and utility provider comments through the application process. No major concerns were raised. And the last is the TPR analysis that was completed. So the criteria for the zone change, first is the comprehensive plan consistency. The comprehensive plan designates the land as designates the land as low density residential. The consistent and proposed zoning with that is R1. The proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I just spoke to the adequate public facilities and services. The last is the transportation planning rule consistency for zone changes pursuant to state law, which is the transportation planning rule. Consistency with those state requirements are required. A transportation memo that showed consistency with that ruling was completed by DKS, which essentially concluded that the proposed zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan zoning, and therefore no additional analysis is needed at this time. So to conclude, staff recommend that Planning Commission move to recommend approval onto city council for the annexation application and zone change application. And so as a reminder, this is a type 4 application, which requires planning commission, which requires city council approval. So you all will make a recommendation to city council, and council will have the final decision. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, very good. We're going to go around the commission and see if we have any questions for staff at this time. Mr. Wellen?
Don and I talked about this earlier. I guess coming back to that property to the south, Don, you said that they've shown interest in annexing in down the road?
As part of the urban growth boundary expansion process, which is not really the subject of tonight's discussion, but just for context, because of the housing needs analysis that shows 73 acres overall as an urban growth boundary expansion need, and also looking at properties that are meeting criteria for annexation, the property that is to the south would be highly looked at based on it would score highly on the criteria for annexation. We've also received indication from IFA, who owns that property, that they would like to be included in the boundary expansion when that happens. So the likelihood is high, in our opinion as staff, that that property will end up being brought into the boundary. That's a separate process from tonight's discussion. But it does weigh in, I think, and this is part of staff's recommendation on the circulation elements here, even though this is not a development application tonight, but the reasoning for the connection, removing that connection from the south and putting it to the west is in part because of the likelihood that that property will be annexed and developed in the future.
I guess that's, so we're pushing for the UGB to be included in this next expansion. I guess that's really my point.
It's, again, separate from tonight's discussion, but
Right.
yes, I think that we're going through Goal 14 analysis right now, and that process has not been completed, but just on the surface level, that property will score high based on the state's criteria for what property should be brought in first to the city.
Great. That's all I got.
Commissioner George, have you got any questions? Sorry.
My husband's name, but anyway, I've only had it for about 4 years. Thank you, Emily, for a great presentation. Really appreciate it. Done a great job. I do have one question. I think it's just a question out of ignorance. It's from it's on page 2 of, I think, the staff report. It just is about the right-of-way. So it says the subject site is, approximately 3.39 acres. An additional 0.44 acres of additional right-of-way from Holly Street will be annexed to facilitate, public facilities and all that. And I tried to look at that from a map, or maybe I just don't understand right-of-ways enough, but can you expand on that just a little bit, please?
Sure. So I don't have a great map, but I can try and visualize
That's okay.
here. But basically, just the section of North Holly Street right now, basically from the intersection of Territorial, or from the north edge of the intersection of Territorial and Holly up to the north boundary of the site, is included to be brought into the city. It's currently out, it's in our, much like a property, it's in our UGB, but it's outside city limits. So the road itself is proposed to be brought in. However, it being annexed doesn't change the ownership of the road. So the road will still be owned and managed by Clackamas County, but would be located in the city itself, which we have several examples of, roads throughout the city that exist in that manner.
Like Redwood was. Okay, that
Yeah.
answers perfectly. Thank you so much, Emily. That's it for me.
Mr. Mickelson? Any questions?
Oh, no questions. Thank you.
The only thing that is standing out with me is the original proposal was to have a street come in at Hawthorne, and it showed the stub on the plan, on the concept. But it's the distance between Holly Street and where that would come in is a problem. Are we close on that at all? And the reason that I'm questioning that is, and I looked at this and looked at it, if we don't get some kind of a connection with through there, when we go down, it's going to be all the way to Birch Street, and I'm not even sure we can make it. There's one piece parcel property that's open down at the end, but we'd probably have to buy it. It's private ownership, but that's the only way we're going to get a connection before we reach the river, basically. And so I'm wondering, are we missing the boat here? I mean, if we're within 10 or 15 feet or 20 feet, are we goofing up there? And I realize that the engineers and everybody says, but I'm just thinking, I'm projecting ahead. It's not so much for this parcel, but if we have that street and it can go on straight on through the rest of this, when it does come in, that would give us continuity through that whole thing. So I guess my question is if we're not doing that because it's too close, and too close is only within 20 or even 30 feet, are we giving up that access there? Because we're not going to get it if we don't do it there.
I truthfully don't remember the exact number. Kind of what happens beyond the boundary of this specific site in this area that's unincorporated and outside the UGB is something that both we and Public Works looked at pretty closely. I don't remember there being a conversation of, it's pretty close, maybe we can work with it. I know that kind of the preliminary plans is basically where the west edge of the subject site is to kind of create a north-south connection there, but I can't recall where on territorial that north-south connection went to. I want to say it kind of just separated basically where the north connection would come to territorial. So, the spacing is important, but also there could be a connection to territorial somewhere.
Not really. Not until you get all the way down to Birch Street, there's not going to be any connection.
Because it's all privately owned,
That's all.
parcelized.
And the thing of it is if we don't put it right here and do something with Hawthorne and bring it on through, that means that when we do something, you might be able to squeeze one in at the end of that where their stub is at, but that's going to put a street next to this other privately owned property, and that, I don't know how great that'll be, and I don't know if we can squeeze that in there.
And Don, do you recall, I think Grant was the proposed connection, but I don't think what you're talking about of the existing, structures and land purchasing was.
Elm Street?
Well, Elm Street is all the way down, but the problem is that we've got private lots, all the houses all the way down where Elm comes in. Anyway, my concern is that we're missing an opportunity here to kind of help our TSP flow and function a little bit better.
And I think part of the, and great point, this may not answer completely the question. There will be concept planning that will be done as part of the urban growth boundary process, which will articulate where the street network is going to go, et cetera. So I think some of that will be figured out before we see like large scale development there for sure, or it being brought into the boundary. We're looking at something right now. I don't have full recollection of this either. I think the challenge is that spacing there is not necessarily, it's not meeting the standard, and there's some safety issues there, as I understand as well, because of the proximity of the two. But to your point, I think that's, trying to bring something up here just to take a look at it where it would conceptually connect.
And Don, wouldn't that this would be another discussion, right? When they go to develop it.
It would, I
Well,
think it's.
it
yeah.
would from, except for this point of, I don't want the applicant to come into this
Yeah.
thinking, we're not going to have to do this, and then when they come in for this, then, oh yeah, well, we decided we want that. I think it should be part of the
That's a good
discussion.
point.
I think it's good to have that discussion here, but I think for this development here, obviously it sets a stage. I mean, I think consequentially, this development by itself is not really, it's more the long-term connection
Right.
is what you're discussing, which I think, I don't know if we're going to be able to solve that. It's somewhat, peripheral to our discussion here, but to your point, I think,
There doesn't have street names.
okay.
Well, let me put it,
Birch isn't, sorry. It does appear in the preliminary shadow platting that we discussed with Public Works. The idea is that Birch becomes a major north-south connection point.
okay.
But then, yeah, I can't see but then there is also, I can't read it. Elm is also the other connection that was conceptualized, as long with one in between Birch and Elm, and one at Grant. So they're proposing, or this initial plan proposed a connection at Grant, further down
And
from.
we've got a way to make a connection at Grant?
Yes, because, let me share the screen again, sorry. There is, oh, well,
I don't think so.
I guess I was thinking Grant's further down.
Okay, I'm not going to belabor this. My point is that when this does come up for development to do it, that's going to be a discussion point, because
So noted.
I think that's
yeah.
important.
And
as far
I
as-
think we will have, and I'm sure the applicant team will be prepared as well, but we'll be more prepared to respond to that issue. We'll be a bit further along in our process as well. I'm not sure how quickly, I think it's December 18th is the hearing, so I'm not sure how quickly the subdivision application, I think it's coming through as well. But yes, so noted. I mean, I
Okay.
think that's something we can talk about. It's a bit tricky because we're dealing with the future development, but I think we can articulate that to a greater degree in the subdivision stage.
Well, the other tricky point is that that's not our road, territorial.
Yeah.
So would the county even let us put one in that's marginally close or whatever? They might say, no, that's not going to happen, it's unsafe or whatever, but this is the only opportunity we're going to have to make some kind of a connection out of this for quite a long ways. So anyway, any other questions for staff? Anyone? Judy? No? Okay. Then we are going to move into the applicant's presentation. Thank you. Make sure you state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Good evening, and thank you for your time, Commissioners. My name is Marie Holliday with AKS Engineering, and for the record, my address is 12965 Southwest Herman Road, Suite 100, Tualatin, Oregon, 97062. And up for your consideration tonight is the North Holly annexation and zone change application on behalf of Venture Properties. Next slide, please. Again, my name is Marie Holliday with AKS Engineering, and we provided the land use planning, civil engineering, and other applicant services for the project this evening. With me this evening is also Darko Simic, the applicant's civil engineer, and he may be able to speak a little bit closer to some of the street design questions that came up previously. Next slide, please. So diving right into the project overview, the subject site is generally located in the northwest quadrant near the city limits there, north of Northwest Territorial Road and south of Northwest 22nd Avenue along the west side of North Holly Street. The total annexation area is 3.83 gross acres, and this project involves two applications under review, again, the annexation and the zone change. Next slide, please. So on the screen is a graphic of the annexation overview, and the purple shading indicates the total annexation area. The total area is 3.83 gross acres, and that includes the subject site, which is tax lot 1900 of 3.39 acres, and also includes the public right-of-way adjacent to the site at North Holly Street, which amounts to 0.44 acres. Commissioner Jarosh asked a question earlier. Again, here's a better probably graphic for you to visualize that. Again, that brings Holly Street into city limits and allows the applicant in the future to make street improvements and street infrastructure connections to the site. Next slide, please. Staff gave a thorough presentation, so I'll try and stay brief. The annexation approval criteria of Chapter 16.84 are shown on the screen. These criteria ensure that the site can be reasonably urbanized. And the staff report starting at page 6 demonstrates these findings in detail. And the applicant's submittal included a robust review of these criteria. Again, starting with criterion 1, this project is shown on a map in the comprehensive plan that requires a development concept plan be approved for the site. And that's an important criteria. We'll show a slide in a moment there for that. But generally, an annexation needs to prove that there's infrastructure available to be extended to serve the site and that the city has capacity to provide those services. The staff report and the applicant's materials showed that those criterion have been met. And another important criteria, again, is the transportation planning rule. The city's transportation consultant, DKS and Associates, provided the TPR assessment, which concluded that this application will not have a significant effect on the transportation system. Next slide, please. Shown on your screen here is a map of the City of Canby's comprehensive plan. This site is shown in a blown-up bubble there to the left and shows that the site is slated for low-density residential designation upon annexation. That red dash boundary signifies the urban growth boundary. So again, the property is within the UGB, but just not quite within city limits. And the black dash line there shows the nearest connection to city limits. So again, the Dodds Farm subdivision is just located to the northeast of the site, and to the south of the site is incorporated city limits with similar zoning. Next slide, please. Here's a map of the City of Canby zoning. The current zoning for the site is Clackamas County's RRFF5, which is a rural residential zone limited to 5 acres. You can see to the north and west of the property, those unincorporated properties are zoned exclusive farm use in that light green shaded area. And here again, you can see the urban growth boundary and the city limits. And so this project, upon annexation, would apply the city's forecasted designation, which is R1 or low density residential. Next slide, please. And here on the screen is an image of the North Holly Development Concept Plan. And as staff discussed, this property was previously reviewed for annexation into the city. This development concept plan showed the infrastructure connections and street patterns. So as you can see blown up on the left-hand corner of the screen is the subject site. You can see the North Holly leg that would extend into territorial there. And this DCP was approved and adopted. It was reviewed in 2018 and adopted in 2019, and the Dodds Farm subdivision to the northeast has already been annexed, and there's already homes there along North Holly Street. So considering that the Holly Development Concept Plan has been approved, the city can be ensured that public facilities are available to the site, and this property has been reviewed in detail in the past. Next slide, please. One of the annexation criteria relates to demonstrating that the city has a need for additional residential land, and the Canby's housing needs analysis was recently adopted in July of this summer. And over the 20-year planning period, which is from 2023 to 2043, Canby has a demand for over 2,000 dwelling units across zoning designations. And after accounting for projects currently approved or under construction, that is reduced to about 1,800 dwelling units. And so Canby has a significant need for additional single-family housing. Once that housing need is broken out into zoning categories and housing types, that amounts to about 555 single-family detached homes that are needed within city limits. And so in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you can see a little graphic there. Upon annexation, this property would have the capacity to provide about 16 lots, or again, 16 single-family detached homes, which is anticipated to be provided and reviewed through a subsequent subdivision application. And given that the city is in the midst of an urban growth boundary expansion, land currently within the UGB but outside of the city limits should be considered first and foremost, as it's most available to city limits and city infrastructure. Next slide, please. This project would provide some benefits to the community, including, again, needed housing that we're seeing as a regional issue throughout the area, and this project would be consistent with the Canby's comprehensive plan. It would implement the city's land use pattern vision for the area, including unlocking the southwestern edge of the North Holly DCP area, which has already been reviewed and adopted through all the way through City Council. This project would provide future infrastructure improvements and connections. And again, those elements would be reviewed through a subsequent subdivision application. So this annexation proposal included findings that the infrastructure is available, such as sewer, water, and utility extensions, but those exact connection points and capacity would be reviewed through, again, a subsequent subdivision application, which would be before the Planning Commission. And among needed housing, the application would also provide future system development charges and an increased tax base for the city. So with that said, our team is available for questions. Again, I have our civil engineer for the project here, Darko Simic, who might be able to speak a little bit more to the transportation pattern for the area. The city's transportation engineer, DKS, through initial meetings with the applicant and through the pre-application process, made some findings that the transportation network wouldn't be viable with that connection to down south to Territorial. They did provide a shadow plat showing how those properties could be provided access in the future. And kind of just south of our property here, this chunk out that is currently unincorporated and zoned exclusive farm use. This shadow plat from DKS basically provided a design for a cul-de-sac that would come through and basically dead end into that area. And then the applicant's future subdivision would show how future connections could be made to this, the road stub that's connected to the west property boundary. So with that said, again, I'm Marie Holliday and I'm available for any questions you might have, and we would appreciate your support in recommending approval of this application this evening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Llewellyn, any questions? No questions. Sachin?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
DeRose, Mr. DeRose, any questions? Any questions?
I do, just one. Thank
Don't
you,
go
Marie.
away.
That was an excellent presentation, I appreciate it.
Sure.
I just have one question for clarity. You mentioned that it unlocks the southwest edge of the North Holly DCP. I kind of think that I know what that means, but can you elaborate just a little bit, please?
Sure. So in the city's comprehensive plan, there's a map that requires certain properties throughout the city be reviewed for compliance with future annexation. So certain areas of the city, or excuse me, outside of city limits, basically are reviewed at a higher standard to make sure that future connectivity happens. They're kind of larger blocks of land. And so this property was involved in that review in 2018. Per the map, it was involved in this DCP just based on the comprehensive plan map. But when that property was reviewed, not every piece of the DCP was in singular ownership and not necessarily prepared for annexation at that time. So the approved DCP shows a vision for the area, which the applicant intends to move forward with without modification. If they desire to change street connections or or things like that. It could have been heard before you this evening to basically modify that development concept plan. But moving forward, we're just looking to be in line with the approved and adopted plan that City Council reviewed in 2019, and basically make a future land division that is in compliance with that DCP. So it would match the street network, the utilities, the city's capacity to provide service to the site. And so it basically lays the framework for this property to be urbanized in the future.
I see. So it sort of takes a chunk of it and aligns it with the plans. That's helpful.
Yeah,
Okay,
and so,
thank you.
sure.
Is that all, Judy?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, good. And I don't have any questions, basically because I think staff did an excellent job presenting this. And you too, Ms. Holliday, you did an excellent job. I appreciate it. Okay, anything else anybody needs to say? Okay, we are going to close the public hearing and move into commissioner deliberation. Mr. Well?
The only concern I have, we talked earlier on, is these are things we've tried to avoid in the past, is we're really kind of creating an island by jumping over that south property, and this has been issues in the past. That would be my only concern on this, but I do like the fact it's low density. We need more of that. I like the fact that we're going to really push this to be included in the new UGB. And, hopefully we can incentivize these guys to come in, because it'd be a lot easier to plan this stuff with that property. And that's all I got.
It all looks to be in line with documents that have passed before me in the past, and piece by piece, it's getting filled in. I kind of like that house. It's up there on a hill. When it went up for sale, I was like, well, that'd be kind of neat, but not for me. I think this is going to be just another piece in filling up that area north of town. And I think that there's nothing to object to.
Judy?
I think this is just a sign of things to come. To me, it's a good precursor, sort of a test of how we go about this piece by piece by piece, because we got a lot of this coming ahead of us. And it was so nice, as you said, that all the ducks were in a row, the presentations were great and concise and well done. So to me, this is, hopefully they'll all be done this way. Thank you.
Okay. I am, it's the patchwork that quilts our community together, one piece at a time, and this is, you guys are kind of on the forefront of this particular development. So I don't have any problem with it. My big concern is that the continuity of our transportation and of course utilities and whatnot all come in together, but the transportation, especially in this particular area, because we don't have a whole lot of outlets to go either way on this. So if we can just keep that in mind as we're moving forward, that'd be great. I don't know how soon this plans on being developed, whether we're going to have more come in between now and your development. It's hard to say, but I think it's sign of the times. Don't know how else to say it. So we are going to close the discussion and move for the chair will entertain a motion to this proposal.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve ANN 24-01/ZC 24-01, North Holly Street annexation.
I have a motion. Question?
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion further by the commissioners? Okay, very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We're going to do a roll call, starting with Mr. Llewellyn.
Aye.
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
And myself as an aye. It passes 4-0. So we are good. Good luck with your project. Thank you very much for the good presentation on everyone's behalf. I appreciate it. And I know the commissioners do too. Okay, very good. That went painlessly. That was good. So items of interest report from planning staff. Don?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ewart. Just a few items. Because of the holiday, the next packet for OLCC on December 9th is coming out tomorrow. So just for your information, you're going to have a little bit more information coming soon here for our next hearing on December 9th. Wanted to congratulate Commissioner Hannah Ellison, Commissioner Jarosh, and Commissioner Llewellyn for their reappointments for the next 2 years. So that would expire on December 31st, 2027. So as commissioners, that was at the last council meeting. January 13th, we will be selecting chair and vice chair again. So if you all want to think about that, and we'll be going through that discussion. Housing efficiency measures were approved by the City Council on the last hearing on the 20th. That will become effective on December 20th of this year. There'll be another on the housing production strategies, just on the strategies themselves, we are spending a little bit more time on discussing those. My hope is that we have a joint City Council Planning Commission work session on February 19. I know that's not normally the date that we meet, but that's the council date, and my hope is that we can have a work session to go through the strategies and go through them in detail. I think there's a need to do that, and there'll be hopefully a robust discussion around those items. This is about what the city, what the needs are of the city, and then what the city is able to do in terms of the strategies themselves. What's going to remain on the table, what will remain off the table. We'll be comparing that to other jurisdictions that have gone through this process. And kind of trying to define where we're at with that. And then that will help us advance this and take it back through the Department of Land Conservation and Development, first going through Planning Commission and Council on that. And that's really all I had for updates.
Okay. Very good. So we've got that out of the way. Items of interest, guidance from the Planning Commission. You guys have anything for staff? Judy?
I guess I've just given tonight, and maybe something to think about for next year is trying to wrap my head around, we're going to have many of these coming now. We're starting next year is maybe a refresher on what happens with parks. And I know that was mentioned in some of the reports and, how does that occur and what is the timelines and then about like streets, like you were talking about, Dan, is how, just a better understanding. I don't know, maybe I just need to be pointed to some things to look at, but as we head toward a year of more of these, maybe just some education I'm thinking about, for me personally anyway.
And clearly that's something we can provide to give you some more background. I think it probably is a real good time to bring some updates on parks. There's a number of them that are actually planned or in process of development. We could go through that process and discussion, right? We have that, and I think Ryan Potter, our planning manager, has been really focused on that. I think that would be a really good work session topic, or a topic at least to bring you all up to speed. On the street planning, there will be another work session. It may be joint, it may not be joint, but you all will either have that separately or with the council. With transportation, that's next year. We have direction, really, I think, on all fronts now to move forward with the transportation side of things a bit more, and that would be probably early part of next year. We'll have some work session regarding that and to bring you all up to speed. I know there's been a bit of a there's been less traffic information and more housing information, but we're now getting to a point where we can actually share that out on roads, levels of service, what we're doing in the future, et cetera. So that's another item we can bring forward.
Yeah, one thing for me that's utterly confusing is which roads are county-owned and which roads are city-owned, like we used to have with Redwood, and are we building a bunch of subdivisions on roads that we can't control, and then they're not good roads, and anyway, I don't know. I'm confused, sorry.
Well, some of that's going to come out in discussion as well. I mean, I think there is, there's actually a lot of city roads. I mean, the goal is really to take all the county roads over, and that's the eventual goal in the entire scheme of things. The timing of that is something we could probably bring you all up to speed on, and I could actually learn from that as well. So that might be a public works combination with us and planning.
That'd be awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Don, I ran across an article about how PSU Research has revised its estimate for Oregon's population down for 2023, and I was wondering if that affected any of our goal numbers for population expansion in Canby.
The population projections we use for housing needs analysis were from a 2020 base, and we are locked in to that base. That is something that gives us a bit more autonomy because the state is also doing housing unit allocations, and the new allocations are coming out at the beginning of the year. We are not subject to those until we re-update our housing needs analysis and our housing production strategy in 2030 and 2031. So they're out about 8 years. So that's actually, there's always these ever-changing things. I don't think they're dramatic, but what I have understood is that the density in those allocations is higher, even though the number of units, the expectation on the density for the allocations is higher, even though the units might be, like you mentioned, lower. So that's based on need, and so we have a bit more autonomy. We are subject to the 2020 population piece of that. I don't think that's a bad thing for us because of the ability to have our own kind of setting our own destiny a bit is more in our control than it is in the states at this point. And again, not to get philosophical, but it does give us that ability to control that a bit more.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else got input? I'm not seeing any, so I guess I will go ahead and close this thing. Don, you got anything else?
No, that's it for tonight.
We'll go ahead and close this wonderful planning commission meeting for this year. I just want to, if there's any of the commissioners that are going to re-listen to this or are actually listening tonight, the next meeting on the 9th of December, we need to have everybody here because we've got an application come in that needs to be discussed, and I'm probably going to be out of town, so I'll try to Zoom it and do that as best I can. So I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. If I don't see you again, Merry Christmas, and we'll close this meeting.